You have been inside this castle for 3 hours and nobody knows you are here. Not because you are hiding. You are standing in the open courtyard dressed as a servant, carrying a water bucket, moving at exactly the pace a servant moves. The guards have already looked at you twice. Both times, you looked back with a calm and blank face.
What the Sigma?
Like a man who has nothing to hide. The name you gave at the gate this morning is not your real name. You hide your knife where they would not think to search for it. And somewhere inside this castle is the document you came to steal, and you have until midnight to find it and leave. Every guard standing in this courtyard notices your actions. If your disguise failed, there was usually no fight waiting at the end of it. Real failure was quiet. A guard stared at your face 1 second too long. Someone noticed your accent belonged to the wrong province. Someone asked you a question and your answer arrived just a little too slowly. Beneath the castle were the rooms the servants tried not to think about. Every castle had them. The clans taught you about those rooms early. To remove illusions from your head, death was simple. Being capture meant the people kept you alive for as long as possible until they had extracted everything from you. Names, routes, contacts. Who sent you here? What are you here for? That is why the training focused so heavily on blending in. The best shinobi were not the most dangerous fighters. They were the men nobody stopped to care for. You also trained in what the shinobi called the tools of entry. In 1676, a manual called the Bonsen Shukai was collected from centuries of accumulated knowledge. Climbing equipment, lockpicking, swimming, fire starting, and smoke bombs packed with pepper and ash that could blind anyone within 10 feet. It also covered the shuriken, the throwing star, not as a weapon, as a distraction. You threw it into a far corner of a room. It made a sound. A guard turned his head. 3 seconds, and that was all the time you ever needed. 6 weeks ago, you came to this town pretending to be a merchant selling ceramic bowls. You actually sold the bowls because a cover that makes no money draws questions. You rented a room near the castle market and started watching. Every morning before the market opened, you were already sitting in a spot where you could see the castle gates clearly. You watched which guards switched at which gate and when, which servants used the east entrance and which used the west, and at what time where one guard left before the next one arrived. You visited the same vegetable stall every morning until the woman who ran it nodded at you without even looking up. It was not friendship. It was something more useful. A man that people recognize belongs there, and a man that belongs there is never questioned. You were building a version of yourself that had always lived here. After enough days, you stopped having to think before you answered to the merchant's name. That was the dangerous part. You already know what that feels like in small doses. Walking into a room and acting calm when you are not. Keeping your face still while something else is moving underneath it. Now imagine doing that every single hour for 6 weeks. In public, around people who would turn you in the moment, something felt off. Never a moment to put it down. Never a room where you could just be yourself. The word shinobi means to endure, and this is what that word actually meant, not physical strength. It meant living inside another person so completely that you forgot there was ever a distance between you and them. 3 weeks in, and you made contact with a servant who worked inside the castle, a man with debts and his own reasons to help. He told you where the document was kept, which room, which cabinet, and at what time the room was empty after dark. He told you which floorboards in the hallway would make noise and which ones didn't. He told you about the time gap in the guard schedule every Tuesday evening between the 8th and 9th hour. You memorized all of it and made him go over the room layout twice. You did not write any of it down because writing leaves proof and memory leaves nothing. Every night for the next week, before you went to sleep, you walked through that room inside your head. The door, the hallway, the cabinet on the far wall, the window, and the kind of light that would come through it at night. You did this until you could move through that entire room in complete darkness without stopping once. 10 days ago, you stopped coming to the market. Merchants move on and nobody pays attention to the ones who do. That was the point. Tonight you arrived at the east gate dressed as a kitchen servant from a nearby estate, carrying a delivery and using the name of that person your contact said would not be on duty that evening. The guard checked the delivery and let you go, and you have been inside the castle for 3 hours now. The bucket in your hand is heavier than it needs to be. A guard walks across the courtyard about 15 feet away. You watch him the way you would watch something you have seen so many times. It stopped meaning anything. No interest. None of the stillness that shows up in a face when it is trying not to look scared. He walks past. You move toward the east corridor. You take the stairs at the pace of someone who has climbed them before, not slow enough to look uncertain and not fast enough to look like you are in a hurry. At the top of the stairs, you suddenly stop. There is a guard standing at the far end of the hallway and he is not supposed to be there. Your contact contact told you this hallway would be empty between the 8th and 9th hour. So either the schedule changed or the information was wrong. You cannot turn around. A servant who climbs a staircase and immediately walks back down is a servant that someone remembers. So you keep moving. 2 doors before the records room, you open a storage room door, step inside, and pull it almost closed behind you. The guard's footsteps are getting closer to you. You press your back flat against the wall in the dark and slow your breathing until it nearly disappears. Your hand moves to the knife before you even realize it did. The footsteps slow just outside the door and then stop. You can hear him shifting his weight on the floorboards. 1 second, then 2. The door is not fully closed, and if he pushes it open, you will have less than a second before he understands what he is looking at. 5 seconds pass. Then the footsteps start moving again, quieter now, going back down the staircase and disappearing. You wait another 30 seconds before stepping back into the hallway. The records room is exactly where your contact said it would be. You step over the floorboard he warned you about. The room is dark, and you do not light a candle because light showing under a door is enough to end a mission. You work using the faint glow coming through the window from the torches in the courtyard below. Barely enough light to see, and exactly what you had prepared for. The cabinet is where he said it would be. The document is inside it. You read it once, memorize everything that matters, and then put it back at the exact angle you found it. Taking it would be noticed by morning, but leaving it means they will not understand what happened until it no longer matters. You are back in the courtyard 9 minutes before the guards change shifts. You leave the bucket on your way out and nod once to the guard at the east gate with the tired look of a man finishing a long, forgettable shift. Then you walk out into the street. You do not run. Running is for people who think someone is following them. 3 blocks away, you stop beside a water trough and let everything go. The posture, the walk, the face that had belonged to someone else for 6 weeks. It takes longer than you expected, and that's the part no training manual ever really covers. After enough time inside a disguise, the line between you and the person you were pretending to be starts to disappear. Letting it go does not feel like relief. It feels more like losing something. You were that person long enough that the distance closed completely, and now you have to remember who you were before him. The mission was never about fighting. It was about making fighting unnecessary by becoming so completely ordinary that nobody ever thought to look any closer. The sword was always the last resort. Patience was the real weapon. The castles changed. The method never did.